Yo, people, lateness is greatness, but no, punctuality is the mentality because we're on time today with Ian Darke. This is this is Hall of Fame type level guest we got coming in here. Massive honor for me to be interviewing you, bro, and I can't wait to start. How are you, first of all?
I'm very well. Good to talk to you, but I'm not sure I can live up to that great billing.
I'm sure you can. Listen, I know you can. I've been listening to all of your commentary for years now, and you've covered more games than most. And obviously, this time in this year that we've just had, we've just been speaking off air. There's been more games covered live than ever. And I think when we, as we were saying, when people speak about the fixture list, they always bring up the players. They bring up, player welfare, which we're going to get into in so much, with all of that. But they forget the commentators, the fact that you guys have to go to every single game. So, that's been different for you. I want to take it to the start of lockdown because that's really where I want to begin here. Is obviously it's a different time for a commentator to be covering in this kind of situation. I remember you speaking so much on the start of lockdown, Bundesliga, covering it from your home and a different environment completely. How have you coped with covering it in lockdown now? Because there's no fans. Does that affect your commentary? Does it change the dynamic?
Yeah, it's hard. A bad game in an empty stadium is difficult to commentate on. It's like being out in the park, and you can hear all the shouts, you can hear the contact with the ball, you can hear the angry coaches on the sidelines. But it's hard really to generate that same edge and atmosphere when the ground is empty and cavernous. They call them the ghost games in Germany, and I think that sums it up. And I just can't wait. It's happening now, of course. We had that game at the weekend with a crowd. I can't wait for the fans to come back, because what we've learned, I think, above everything else in the last year or so is this game is nothing without the supporters. So power to the people.
100%. I can't wait to get back inside. Obviously, we saw a lot of mayhem this week, which we'll get into later. But, in terms of the fan support, the protests that were going on, you can still see that they are the heart and soul of any club. And, you just miss that atmosphere. I think, does it push you on as a commentator when you have the fans cheering as well? Obviously, the VAR checks, that's been something that everybody's been speaking about. Has that affected you as well? Because you never know if a goal's gone in. I find myself holding back in celebration because I don't even know if the goal's even going to stand.
I started off as a big supporter of VAR. I thought it would iron out a lot of the big debates and controversies, and it would deliver some justice. In fact, it's been nothing short of a calamity. I think it's absolutely awful. It's destroyed the feel of the game, the spirit, the passion. It's drained the drama. And a lot of it really is just kind of ditched common sense. There have been some crazy decisions. Look at the one at the weekend with Fabian Balbuena, who was kicking the ball upfield, and accidentally on the follow through, he catches Ben Chilwell and gets a red card. What is VAR doing, even getting involved in something like that? Absolutely daft decisions. And whoever wanted to see offsides applied to, the last button on your shirt or an undone shoelace. Crazy, just crazy. And they really do have to rethink it all. It isn't going to go away, but they do need to rethink it.
I remember at Anfield, I don't know if you remember, that there was a Timo Werner run and a little hair follicle was probably offside at that point, and his goal got disallowed. And I remember, the old rules of the advantage given to the striker or the forward to get the goal, to make the game more interesting. That seems to have gone out the window now. Do you think, the refereeing in this country is a standard below in Europe, or how do you think it is? Because obviously the technology is there to use; it's meant to help them, but at times it's overcomplicating situations for them in their head.
Yeah, I think it's a complicated issue. It's not only to do with refereeing standards; it's to do with, I think they've got to tweak the laws to cope with the VAR era. They've got to look at the whole offside thing again, because I think the big problem when you get down to it, and the big question is the game better with VAR? Is it a better spectacle? And I think the answer in a poll of supporters, managers and players would be a resounding no. It isn't. It isn't better. So it does need to be completely rethought, because we don't really want to try to deliver, do we, the perfect game of football. That's not possible. We kind of liked it with the mistakes in, and when a goal was scored, you kind of knew it was a goal. It was that big dramatic moment, that explosive moment. We're being robbed of a lot of that, and there's a feeling, I think, now of the VAR becoming just a nosy policeman. A goal is scored, and you're thinking, let's see what we can find out was wrong with that one. What was wrong with that goal then? So you're watching a game on television and you might be a neutral, not supporting either side. You think, what a great goal. But, oh, no, just a minute. There was somebody wearing size 11 boots and he's just a little he's offside. So it's an unsatisfactory feeling.
That is a brilliant analogy. It feels like someone's going through your luggage and, do you know what I mean? You're trying to have a private life and they're spying on you in some way. I feel like, the controversy, the decision-making, the talk after the game, was that right? Was that wrong? That was kind of part of it. And like you said, the aim for perfection has kind of ruined it somewhat. We've already got a question there. I was going to ask this later, but I will take the questions coming in because I know, you're going to have a lot of fans in this chat. Everybody's going crazy. They're really excited to have you here. The best game that you've commentated in your career, what would you put that down to? I know that's a difficult one.
Yeah, there's a lot of games, but I know Martin Tyler's commentary is the famous commentary on the Aguero goal. I mean, you can't get a more dramatic finish to a season than that, with Manchester City winning the title with the last kick of the whole season, as they did, scoring twice in stoppage time. So I was doing that one for American television, for ESPN. So, that was pretty dramatic. And in another game sort of like that, and again, I was working for the Americans on ESPN. The USA were going out of the World Cup and scored with the very last kick of the group against Algeria. Landon Donovan, it was, who scored it. And suddenly they were top of the group. And it was a massive moment. And it was a moment, really, I think, a big breakthrough moment where people in the United States who didn't care for the game, they suddenly got it. It became huge headline news. So that was good too. But I mean, so many great games. I did that game when Brazil lost 7-1 to Germany.
Oh God!
The World Cup. I mean, imagine that. People were crying in the streets.
Yeah.
It's hard to pick out one or two moments, but there's a few. Anyway.
Two levels to delight and despair there when you talk about those games. You speak about the Aguero moment. I still get goosebumps, even though obviously I'm a Chelsea fan. But when it comes to the Aguero moment, I think everybody in football is kind of just like, wow, this is incredible. You've got, Sky Sports doing two, cams for the two games. You've got Manchester United being played. The game's finished, Alex Ferguson saying full time, and they're all just standing there waiting for this comeback, and then it eventually happens with the final touch. And then that Brazil game, wow. I mean, what was it like to watch that? Because at one side, when you've got a beat down like that, because it was a beat down, right? Germany just absolutely wiped the floor of them. It was almost like a training exercise. They was walking it into the net. But you do see those Brazilian fans literally crying in the stand. It's their home tournament. What was it like commentating over that? Because I guess what I want to ask is, when it starts to become 6, 7, do you still get the same like crazy excitement, or do you kind of just like hold it in like, yo, this is getting a bit embarrassing?
I think you've got a ringside seat on history, really, when you're commentating on sport at the top level. And this is a World Cup semi-final. And I had the feeling, as this was unfolding, Germany scored 5 goals in 18 minutes at one stage in the first half. They were just electric. I mean, Brazil were bad, but Germany were absolutely phenomenal that day. And you just have that feeling when you put the microphone down at the end of the game of thinking, people are going to be talking about that game in 50, 100 years' time, as long as football is played. Germany had never lost Brazil had never lost a competitive game at home since 1975 until that. And there they were losing 7-1. I remember we had a bloke at our hotel, a lovely guy. He was a Brazil fan who used to serve us breakfast. And he always turned up in a Brazil shirt. The next morning, he wasn't wearing it.
Oh, and no. You wouldn't be.
I'm never wearing it again. I'm sorry. Our team performed like this. I'm very sorry. I will never wear another Brazil shirt. So that's how deeply they were affected.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. If I saw my club lose that kind of scoreline, I'd be affected for days, maybe weeks, traumatized even. It was.
I hope it doesn't happen. Then they're not going to lose 7-1 anytime soon, are they? They might lose 5-2 to West Bromwich Albion, but not 7.
I'm still getting over that one, but outside that, our defensive record's been fairly flawless. So I'll take that as the anomaly and leave it there. This chat here, it says it was all a dream. Ian, please come back to boxing. We miss you. I mean, listen, there's a big fight coming up, Joshua versus Fury. Could we get you back in there?
Unfortunately, I don't think so, because I've always done football and boxing. I even used to do a little bit of athletics going back, a long time now, to the late 1980s when I was rather younger. But Yeah, I mean, I loved covering the big fights. I did a lot of them. I covered Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson and things like that. But that was then, and this is now. And at this stage, I mean, the football is now such a lot of preparation, travel, work. It's nearly impossible to do two sports these days. So I when it's a really big fight, I do miss it, but I just can't fit it all in and keep a marriage intact.
Yeah. And that is the most important thing, ladies and gentlemen. Keep the marriage intact. You know what I'm saying?
That's what my wife just said, by the way.
Before she comes over your shoulder. I want to talk to you about the finer details of commentary, actually, because that was a nice segue into this final point, just before we get into, obviously, the mayhem that happened earlier in the week, and to get your thoughts on that. But when people see, obviously, commentary, it's the dream job for a lot of people. You get to literally talk over the matches that you're watching live. We all do our own little bit of commentary at home when we're watching the games as fans, standing up, shouting, breaking TVs if drama happens. So for you to be able to do it is obviously a big dream for everyone. And obviously, I just want to ask the finer details that maybe people don't see. Is there, because obviously it's a show, it's a production that you've got to run. There's probably a lot of information coming through your earpiece and whatnot. Talk to us about that and what it's like to juggle everything, I guess.
Well, it's a long job, really, because you get a schedule of games that you've got to cover. And once you know you're going to cover a certain team, you start to read around everything about that team, how they've been playing, what their lineups have been, who's injured, who's out the team. So, for instance, this coming week, I've got Roma, who are going to Manchester United in the semi-final of the Europa League. So I've just started doing my commentary card on Roma here. So just looking on recent results, their European history, how they played Liverpool in the 1984 European Cup final, that sort of thing. And then you try to watch tapes of the teams. So you can, I mean, 98% of our job is identifying the players. If you can't do that, you can't do the job. So I've got to know those by Thursday night. I've got to know those Roma players and familiarize myself. So that's a lot of it. And then it's just finding storylines and things you hope people are quite interested in about individual players, and just maybe taking the temperature of the game itself. What's at stake in the game? Where are these two clubs? And you got to read a lot too. What are the stories that are boiling up? I mean, I'm doing United, and it's you saw the story this morning about Maguire and Fred having a run in on the pitch yesterday, with him calling him. I won't say the words because this is a family broadcast, but. Yes, but that's interesting, and you'd allude to that. Like last night, I did Aston Villa West Bromwich Albion, which turned out to be a pretty good game, actually. And obviously, you back reference to the Super League there. I mean, one of the first points I made is these two were members of the original Super League, the proper one that's lasted 133 years, that was formed in 1888. And it didn't last 2 days. It's still around, and it's still with promotion and relegation. So, yeah, you've say I was doing Chelsea. You've got to know as much as the commentator as the people who support the club, or you hope you do. Because the minute you say something and they go, well, that's not right, didn't we do that? And I'm sure that happens. We can never be, but you hope to get to that sort of level. So you have to read and watch a lot. And yeah, you're right. During the broadcast, there's a lot of stuff going on in the headphones. It's not just Glenn Hoddle or whoever is alongside you talking. You've got the director giving camera instructions. That's all going on. You've got a producer telling you that they want you to put in the promotions for the games coming up, and then you've sometimes got the VAR guy as well talking to the referee. You can hear that. So yeah, there's a lot going on. It's not just like going to a game. When people say to me, and they do, and they're right, it's great watching football for a living, but it isn't like going and having a few beers with your mates and going down and sitting out and having a good laugh. There's quite a lot to do.
Yeah, well, credit to you, honestly, because I don't know how I'll be able to deal with different voices coming into my ear and then actually having to speak on it as well. It sounds really difficult. You did allude to the Super League, which lasted a long 2 days, 72 hours of mayhem, maybe for football fans. For me, certainly, there was a day where I just was completely checked out of football. I couldn't believe the announcements and the statements coming out from clubs and everything. And I guess it'll be interesting to get your opinion on it, because mainly because the Champions League's coming up this week, and I think it's kind of awkward for UEFA to have Real Madrid play in their competition after everything that's gone on with Perez and the quotes and everything. What was your opinion on the whole, mayhem of it all? Because it was kind of a farce for me personally. It was ridiculous to even propose.
Well, I can't believe really that people who are otherwise that smart enough to be billionaires, businessmen and tycoons could be that stupid, really, to think that they could fly this without it, properly being presented in the first place. And the point they missed is you can do that in the United States, where they have a 32-team NFL and nobody ever loses their place in it. It's all a franchise. But European football's always been based on promotion, relegation. Clubs like Brentford and Brighton and Bournemouth can come into the Premier League. They have that chance every season to do that. And it could be that the likes of, the big six we're talking about could go down out of the Premier League. It can happen. That's what makes it exciting. That's what makes the world go round. So for 6 clubs to skulk off in the background and do a behind the scenes deal was a betrayal of everything really that the game in this country stands for. And quite rightly, it was hounded out of town. I don't think they could believe the reaction to it. And look how quickly. And the Chelsea fans were part of that, and credit to them, going outside Stamford Bridge and telling Petr Cech, telling the players on the bus, telling everybody connected with the club, we are not having this. And all the supporters of the other clubs said exactly the same thing as well. And great credit to them. The people won, and the fans are empowered as well now. And I hope that the fans build on this as well. And I hope they campaign on a few other issues to get a better deal, because it's time they were treated a little bit better, because the game has become too corporate and too commercialized. And I'd like to see a more like model, a bit more like the Bundesliga. It's
50,
things like the prices of the tickets. Make it easy for the fans to go away. Give them a train ticket as part of the journey. Embrace it more. So this could be the start of something big, I think, for the supporters if it's played right.
Yeah, well said. And I think also, this all started because of the new UEFA format, the way that they've set up the 2024 system with the extra teams coming in. We just spoke about off air a little bit about player welfare. Obviously, this season's been very challenging on the players. The schedule is very intense. They're playing every single, 3 or 4 days almost, because there's 2 competitions to juggle. Then obviously the domestic cups come into it. The international breaks, there's always games going in there. They seem to have sandwiched in, instead of 2 games now, 3 games into the international breaks as well. What do you make of the extra games being played in 2024 of UEFA? Because I feel like, if we don't protect these players, the standard of the game is going to drop, and we may get more games, but the actual quality of the game will diminish.
Yeah, and that could be a factor at the European Championship this summer, if we're being honest. You have to hear what the coaches and the managers are telling us about player condition. It's not easy for them. They had a truncated pre-season because last season was pushed back and didn't end till late July. So not the usual levels of fitness when they were going in, and then playing more often. But, big picture here, there's been a pandemic. Hundreds of thousands of people have died and been in hospital. So I don't think it's right for football to be complaining. I think football's just got to get on with it. And football's been fantastic in a way, because, credit to the players and everybody connected with the game for getting the show on and keeping it on pretty safely as well, because I think it has kept a lot of people going. Credit to people like the players as well, have got together, the captains of the club, and the job that the clubs have done in the communities as well. Phoning people up, players getting on the phone and talking to old people and vulnerable people. I think that's formed a bond. So, yeah, although the players are a bit tired and there's a bit of fatigue, it's a pretty small price to pay, really, when you look at the worldwide situation we're in.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I want to get onto the questions now that I've got. Just the quick questions with the viewpoint that you have is fascinating to get some answers on these. Obviously, your favorite game of the season so far. I wanted to get your opinion on that, because some of the bigger games have been a little bit disappointing. There's been a lot of 0-0s thanks to Manchester United, shots fired maybe, but it's just how it is. How have you? What game would you say stands out for you in terms of commentating this season?
The two games I've really enjoyed covering were the two Champions League games between Paris Saint-Germain and Barcelona. I mean, you might remember the first one when Mbappe just ran them ragged and got a hat-trick. So to see him at his electric best, that was something. Barcelona nearly pulled it round in the second game. They might have scored 4 or 5 in the first half. So really enjoyed that. It was a high quality, high octane sort of game, even without a crowd. In the Premier League, you're right. A lot of the bigger games have been on the disappointing side this time. It may be part of that. The fatigue thing you mentioned was part of that. I probably shouldn't say it because there's a lot of Chelsea fans watching this, but I do like a tale of the unexpected. And what happened in that Chelsea 2, West Bromwich Albion 5. Incredible. I mean, fancy that. They're 19th in the table. But I think I think that's done Chelsea good and Thomas Tuchel good because they lost that game and he's had a little rethink and seen a few things. And look, they're right back on track and they're having a fantastic time of it under the new boss. I know a lot of the Chelsea fans were upset that Frank Lampard left and he probably wasn't given quite long enough to pull it around. But there's no arguing what Thomas Tuchel has done at Chelsea. He's got that defense super organized. They don't give much away. They even managed to outplay Manchester City. So fascinating this week against Real Madrid.
Yeah, 100%. And, you talk about that West Brom game. That was kind of the epitome of, not needing to join an elite establishment of a Super League because look, we can't even guarantee that we win all the games in our own domestic league. You can see shocks all the time. That was an absolute drumming from West Brom. They scored some great goals, some great half volleys as well from the wing, and Pierre was amazing that game. So you're spot on.
That's the great democracy of the league, that something like that can happen. I know it's upsetting on the day if you're on the wrong end of games like that, but you want tales of the unexpected. It makes the narrative more interesting.
Yeah, no, 100%. You spoke on Chelsea versus Real Madrid upcoming there. I mean, listen, as a Chelsea fan, obviously I'm quite confident, but looking into these big Champions League games now, who would you put your hat on to go and win that tournament now with PSG, Man City, Chelsea, Real Madrid left? There's obviously a lot of things at play with the Benzema versus Giroud go-kart Formula 1 thing. You've got the Hazard return. There's so much going on. Courtois, there's so much going on there. What do you make of it?
Yeah, Hazard's had such an injury-riddled season, though. I'm not sure how fit and sharp he could really be. Benzema's been flying, of course. So they've got all that European experience and pedigree, haven't they, Real Madrid? So I think it makes them slight favourites, over the two legs, slight favourites. But the way Chelsea have been going under Thomas Tuchel, they seem to have the answer to most problems along the way. So I see that as a kind of 50-50 one. I think I slightly edge towards Manchester City in the other game with Paris Saint-Germain. But Neymar and Mbappe, they can ruin you. They could ruin you in 10 minutes of a game. So it's a great tie. I think if I was Manchester City, I'd be a fan. I'd be a little bit worried. They played, their key players in the final, didn't they? Yesterday, so they've got to go again in a few days' time. So whether they can do that again, I think City at their best, they're very hard to cope with for anybody. But if they're not quite there, as Chelsea proved, you can get them. So pretty hard to call, and predictions basically are there just to make fools of us.
Very true. Very true. I'm glad you didn't walk into that one. Obviously, we spoke about Hazard, loosely there. I want to get your take on maybe the most gifted, technically Chelsea player you've seen when you've been commentating. I've got the shirt up on the wall, hoping potentially this might be the man. But which Chelsea player since you started commentating maybe has impressed you the most technically? Who's been a pleasure to commentate over, I guess?
You've got the shirt behind you. I think that's the man, isn't it? In the current era, Eden Hazard. Yeah, he was great. I mean, and won matches on his own for them sometimes. Even if they were having an off day, he'd come up with some magical dribble, and he was a good finisher as well. Very good finisher. But the other one I'd just throw in the mix, I think you mentioned technically, is Gianfranco Zola, who I think is still loved and revered, isn't he, by every Chelsea fan. I think before Hazard came along, they did a poll who was the Chelsea player, their favourite one, and at the time it was Zola. I don't know if the vote would be different now, but hey, look, Chelsea have had a lot of very good players, especially in the modern era, and you throw people like Frank Lampard and John Terry, of course. into any assessment there. But yeah, I mean, I was there the night Zola scored that amazing goal against Norwich. I think it was an FA Cup game. When I looked at it, what he did, that finished. Did that really happen? Did he really pull that off? He did. So yeah,
he's done some incredible things, Zola. I think his shirt might be retired to my memory. When it comes to Chelsea, and also that moment in the corner flag with Jamie Carragher, those twists and turns. It was just there's so many great moments from the pair of them. Imagine if they played together, it would have been a whole different situation.
Wow. Could you have put them in the same team and still managed to defend well enough?
yeah, that's true. Yeah, that probably would have messed up the balance, but I would have been here for it anyway, just to watch it one time. Obviously, the game as a commentator is all about goals, excitement. These are the moments you live for. Probably the most standout memories will be goals going in as well. Who is your favorite, maybe pure striker to commentate over in terms of since you've had your career here?
You told me you were going to ask me this question, and it's hard to pick out one. But I mean, the great goal scorers, and when I was a kid and younger, there were people like Gerd Müller. I mean, you're way too young to remember him. Brilliant German striker who broke England's hearts at the 1970 World Cup. I mean, he was an amazing finisher. So was Jimmy Greaves. So was Ian Rush. So was Gary Lineker. He wasn't always a television presenter, a star on Twitter. He was a Thierry Henry, Alan Shearer, Aguero, Kane. You got Didier Drogba, if you want a Chelsea name, and Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank. So there's a lot. But if I think if you said who's number one, I think it would be the man they called Der Bomber, Gerd Müller.
Oh wow, yeah, it would be him. He was extremely efficient from what I hear.
Give him a chance. It was in the back of the net.
Yeah,
didn't look like anything till the ball was in the penalty area. He'd suddenly be there. Boom, goal.
Unbelievable. And for you as well, I think. Obviously, we speak about the modern day strikers, Aguero, Drogba, big game player, Rooney as well is very underrated. Harry Kane as well. Hopefully he leaves Tottenham. I'm just saying, as a Chelsea fan, I'm ready to see it. Do you know what I mean? It's after the cup final defeat yesterday, we've been trying to lure him out.
I don't think he'd go to Chelsea when he given the rivalry and Battle of Stamford Bridge and all that. I mean, I'd be surprised if it was not that they wouldn't be prepared.
Not try.
Trying to put a cheeky bid in, but I do think, just mentioning him as we pass by on this subject, I would say, I think Kane probably should go this summer from Tottenham. Spurs fans wouldn't thank me for saying that, but he's done his time really with Spurs, and he does need to think about himself a little bit here. He wants to win things.
Yeah, so, no, 100%. No,
I could see that happening with him.
Yeah, I 100% I agree. I think, when you look back on his he's obviously chasing the Shearer record and all these things, but you want to add some trophies to that as well. I have to ask as well, which moment in commentary left you speechless? Because that's it's not always. I mean, sometimes that's great for effect, I guess, as a commentator. If you don't say anything, people are like, wow, this is stunning. What moment would you say?
Well, I mean, we always try to leave in moments of silence, and they do say silence is golden, and I get all that. But it's more difficult in football, really, than sports like cricket and golf and tennis. To leave big gaps, because it's a fast action sport. So we shouldn't be lost for words because we're paid not to be. But I had a day doing a League Cup tie between Stevenage and Pompey. And I'd arrived with a bit of a heavy cold and I thought, but it's okay. I've had that before. I've taken a bit of medicine. But no, it just got worse and worse and worse. So I was commentating with Tony Gale. And by the time the kickoff came, I could hardly speak. And I had to say to him, like with 10 minutes to go, I said, you're going to have to do most of the talking here because my voice is gone. So it was a terrible broadcast. I just about croaked my way through it. No. Thank goodness Tony Gale was in great form and he did most of the talking, but I was literally lost for words.
You turned into, I guess, co-commentator at that point, isn't it, for that moment there? I mean,
it can happen. I'm surprised it doesn't happen more often, to be honest. But you just feel too unwell to do the job. But somehow, quite often, I felt like I felt pretty rough, and I'm sure all the commentators tell you this. Everyone who's on air will tell you they've had days where it's really been difficult because you do feel a bit breathless or your voice is going a bit, but the adrenaline usually gets you through. It didn't that day.
Yeah, it's if I was to compare it to anything, it's like singing as a performer. Like your voice is your job. So if there's loads of fixtures coming thick and fast, you can feel that. You know what I mean? Because that is your job, to speak and to entertain and to deliver in the big moments. A big moment is obviously partly what happens on the pitch, but also you speaking and narrating it and telling a story is obviously makes up for, it all comes part and parcel with it. So that's huge. And obviously, I hope that you're in fine form this week. Obviously, we've got some big games coming up. We're going to need you.
Just like everybody else, we get ill like other people. We've no divine right to stay above all that. So you hope sort of illness doesn't strike you at the wrong time.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, like I said, I won't keep you too much longer. I had so many questions. I just wanted to really just handpick a few of them. But obviously, we're coming towards the end of the season as well. Is there one game coming up or something that you're really looking forward to? Obviously, the summer, the Euros. What are you most looking forward to coming up on the schedule, do you think?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the European Championship. So I'm doing those because I do some work for ESPN in America, as I've mentioned. So I'm doing the European Championships for them, and I'll be on most of the England games, as it turns out, at Wembley. So I really am looking forward to that. And, I think with the fans back in, it won't be full at Wembley, but it'll be, I think, sort of 25,000, something like that, for those group games. So it's going to be good, and it's going to be quite emotional, I think. I'm really looking forward to doing a game with a crowd again.
Yeah, it's been a while. It really has, and
it really has. Yeah.
I know the fans are definitely looking forward to getting back inside. I'm sure some of them from Stamford Bridge over last week probably tried to sneak in. They was probably that close they could touch it in terms of the stadium and everything, just being there, the chants, and it was a real unifying moment for everyone. And that England team, I'm looking forward to hearing you commentate over them, because there's some real talents coming through. You've got Foden, you've got Mount, Grealish. I don't know how Southgate's going to pick his squad, but Just finally, before we wrap up, from an England perspective, are you in terms of confidence, do you think we can win the tournament?
I don't think they deserve to be favourites. I think England are favourites with the bookmakers because they're playing at home in all their games. So no, I think you've got to say really that teams like France have won the World Cup and they're still very strong.
Yeah.
What about Portugal as well? And look at they've got all the lads who are at Manchester City and Cristiano Ronaldo still playing. They've got a better team than the one that won it 4 years ago. So I think England have got as good a chance as nearly as about 6 or 7 other teams. But it's a pretty open-looking tournament, I think.
Yeah, no, it is. I'm looking forward to it. And I just hope that, I hope we put a good foot forward. We've got a lot of young. The thing is, with England, we've got a lot of young players coming through. So experience-wise, there's a few Harry Kane, and there's a few players that are quite experienced. But there's quite a lot of young core in there. Saka, Smith Rowe. If he was to ever get called up, you've got Declan Rice, Mason Mount. So it's going to be a learning experience, hopefully, for the
Mason Mount's got to start. Mason Mount's got to start, and so has Phil Foden. They've both got to be in the starting lineup too. We've got 2 outstanding, terrific players there, and. They've got to play. They've got to be in the team.
100%. That was the one thing I took from that City game last week. Is as soon as I saw Foden enter the pitch, I was surprised he didn't start. Maybe Pep was, trying to rotate and save him for future fixtures. Obviously, they're juggling many tournaments. But as soon as I seen Foden come on that pitch, you just saw the tempo rise in terms of their play. And he's a very gifted footballer. Mason Mount has just been developing so well this season as well. We're going to wrap up, people. It's been a fantastic show. Ian, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, and honestly, to just listen to you, it's given me, it's reminiscent for all the games that you've commentated and all the big moments that have happened. Final thoughts, and I guess let the people know the fixtures that you've got coming up, where they can definitely check you out on ESPN and BT Sport. Yeah,
thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Great chatting, actually. It's really, really good. Hope you enjoyed it. I did.
Definitely did. 100%. People, listen, the link is going to be in the description. Make sure that you check out all the games coming up. BT Sport, ESPN, that's where you're going to find him. You know where to find him, really. I don't really need to tell you. He's a legendary commentator.
You'll have to go to America to hear the ESPN ones, I'm afraid. But so that's
we have some American viewers.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
We have. Don't worry. We've got it all covered.
All right.
Definitely.
We've got global.
Definitely, all bases covered. The American viewers, ESPN. The UK viewers, BT Sport. Make sure you're listening, because listen, this is one of the best commentators to ever grace the game, and it's an absolute pleasure again just to hear your voice. It's surreal. is very surreal. People, you know, you're going to catch me tomorrow night for the Chelsea versus Real Madrid game, the review. Really looking forward to that game. And obviously, like I said, you know, Roma versus Manchester United, Ian's going to be commentating. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe and I'll see you guys later. Peace. See ya.